What's up everybody, Piscean here. In this video, I'm going to talk about Eclipses and Empire. This is a compendium of astrological eclipses and historical global event charts. So, we see the new moon at the node goes into the solar eclipse, conjunction of luminaries. Here is the solar eclipse geometry imagery, and we're basically talking about solar and lunar eclipses as celestial markers of collective turning points with case studies, technical foundations, visual apparatus, appendices, and glossary. So please stay tuned with peace and love so we can continue teaching you astrology for free. And let's jump into this introduction of why eclipses matter in mundane astrology. So from Ptolemy onward, eclipses have been regarded as among the most potent celestial signatures for collective events. Unlike ordinary lunations, the eclipse occurs when the luminaries meet or oppose near the lunar nodes, the points where the moon's path crosses the ecliptic. The resulting shadow geometry was understood by medieval and Renaissance astrologers as a disruption of the ordinary solar-lunar cycle, capable of releasing or revealing destinies already latent in national and imperial charts. This compendium examines selected historical global events through the lens of contemporary eclipse charts and where relevant the eclipse's relationship to national or foundation charts. The aim is not deterministic prediction, but the disciplined correlation of eclipse symbolism with documented turning points, the outbreak of wars, the collapse of regimes, tech disasters, and large-scale social ruptures. Traditional doctrine held that the zodiacal sign of the eclipse, the house it falls in, relative to a kingdom's chart, the planet's aspect in the eclipse degree, and the duration of the eclipse all modulate its effects. Visibility was also crucial. An eclipse unseen in a region was often judged less potent for that region. Modern practitioners add the Saros series lineage in the eclipse's relationship to outer planet configurations. Alright, so technical foundations of eclipse astrology. Jumping into the solar versus lunar eclipse. So solar eclipse is a new moon occurring near the north or south node, so Rahu or Ketu, and the moon passes between Earth and Sun, casting a shadow on Earth. Symbolically, it is a crisis of identity, leadership, or the life force of a collective, often linked to beginnings, sudden changes of regime, or the obscuring of a central authority. So we see here a solar eclipse conjunction at the node, and a new moon at the node, solar eclipse conjunction of luminaries. So this figure shows geometry of a solar eclipse. And then we see a lunar eclipse, full moon at the node, lunar eclipse is opposition of luminaries. And we see a lunar eclipse is a full moon near the nodes. The Earth stands between Sun and Moon, casting its shadow on the Moon. Symbolically, it is a crisis of culmination, exposure, or emotional collective harvest, frequently associated with the fall of public figures, revelations, or the ending of a cycle already in progress. Here we see the nodal axes and the eclipse zone. So eclipses can only occur when the sun is within approximately 15 to 18 degrees of either lunar node. The exact limit depends on the type and the moon's latitude. We see the nodal axis itself as a karmic or collective fated line in mundane work. Rahu often shows the direction of growth or necessary development for a nation or era, and Ketu shows the past pattern or the point of release. So here we see the lunar nodal axis, the corridor of eclipses, with the eclipse zone in the middle, luminaries within 18 degrees of the nodes. So Ketu and Rahu. And we see orbs, duration, and visibility. Medieval and early modern authors, they paid close attention to the magnitude and duration of an eclipse. Longer total eclipses were judged more forceful. Visibility maps were consulted, or in earlier times, approximate knowledge of which regions would see the event. An eclipse angular in a national chart, or conjunct national sun, moon, or angle, was considered especially activated for that country. Historical case studies, eclipses, and global events. So the following case studies are illustrative correlations, not exhaustive proofs. Each bears a well-documented historical event with a nearby solar or lunar eclipse whose chart symbolism resonates with the nature of the crisis. And we're just going to go over 6 different events here for examples. We see the solar eclipse, August 21st, 1914, and the opening of the Great War. So first, a total solar eclipse occurred on August 21st, 1949 at approximately 27 degrees Leo. World War I had been declared only weeks earlier, late July, early August. Leo is classically associated with kings, rulers, and national pride. The eclipse fell in a sign of solar authority. Contemporary mundane astrologers noted the eclipse's proximity to the outbreak and its occurrence in a fixed fire sign, a signature of entrenched conflict and the wounding of imperial identities. The Cero series to watch. This eclipse carried themes of sudden disruption and the fall of structures. So we see here the eclipse fell right in between Virgo and Leo. In my opinion, there was a midpoint activation. If you haven't seen my other videos, I talk about midpoint and global disaster, specifically World War. Check it out with peace and love. So here we see a schematic placement of August 21st, 1914, the total solar eclipse. And now let's talk about the lunar eclipse of September 16th, 1939, and the expansion of WW2. So Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. The lunar eclipse followed on September 16th at roughly 22 degrees Pisces. So Pisces, the last sign, has long been linked with dissolution, sacrifice, and the suffering of the collective. Lunar eclipses often coincide with the exposure or downfall of what has been hidden. We see here the eclipse accompanied the rapid widening of a conflict that would become global. The watery, mutable nature of the degree underscored themes of boundary dissolution and mass displacement, already visible in the refugee movements of the period. Solar eclipse of February 5th, 1962, in the Cuban Missile Crisis season. The total solar eclipse fell on February 5th, 1962, at approximately 15 degrees Aquarius. Later that year, the world faced the Cuban Missile Crisis. Aquarius designed collective systems, tech, and sudden upheaval is fitting for a crisis involving nuclear missiles and the confrontation of ideological blocs. The eclipse occurred in a period already tense with Cold War alignments. Its air sign placement highlighted the role of information, ideology, and tech brinkmanship. So the Chernobyl disaster and a lunar eclipse of April 24th, 1986. The Chernobyl nuclear accident occurred on April 26, 1986. A lunar eclipse had taken place on April 24th at approximately 3 degrees Scorpio. Scorpio rules radiation, toxicity, hidden power, and sun transformative crises. Lunar eclipses in Scorpio frequently correlate with exposures of buried or radioactive material, literally or metaphorically. The proximity of the eclipse to the disaster and the sign's traditional association with the underworld and irreversible change made this one of the most frequently cited modern eclipse event correlations among mundane practitioners. The solar eclipse of August 11th, 1999. And fin de Cecil anxiety. I hope I'm saying that right. So, this solar eclipse, total solar eclipse of August 11th, 1999, at 18 degrees Leo across Europe and the Middle East and was widely observed. Occurring near the end of the millennium, it concentrated public attention on themes of role and national identity, Leo, the end of an era in apocalyptic speculation. While no single war erupted immediately, the eclipse is often studied as a marker of the transition into a more multipolar and media-saturated geopolitical age that followed. In the lunar eclipse of July 16th, 2000, and the approach of 9/11, a total lunar eclipse occurred on July 16th, 2000, at 24 degrees Capricorn, and we know Capricorn governs structures, governments, and the bones of the collective. In the following year, the attacks of 9/11 shattered assumptions of invulnerability in the U.S. and reshaped global security architecture. Many mundane astrologers later examined the 2000 through 2001 eclipse series in the Saturn-Pluto opposition of the period as part of the celestial signature of structural rupture and the redefinition of national boundaries of safety. Here is selected eclipse event correlations at a glance. And we see here, this is just an illustrative timeline of eclipse-linked global turning points. We see 1914, WW1, 1939, WW2, 1962, the Cuban Missile, 1986, Chernobyl, 2001, 9/11, of course, and COVID-19 pandemic 2020. So we're going to talk about that solar eclipse. An annular solar eclipse occurred on June 21st, 2020 at 0 degrees Cancer. The solstice point a degree of extreme sensitivity. The year is already dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Cancer rules the home, the nation has family, public health, and emotional security. A solar eclipse on the Cancer ingress amplified themes of national lockdown, the redefinition of domestic space, and collective vulnerability. The eclipse's placement at the world point, 0 degrees of cardinal signs, gave it unusual mundane weight. Alright. This video won't be too very long because just a few pages to go over in regards to eclipses and empires. So, method for reading eclipse charts and mundane work. A disciplined approach to eclipse charts includes the following steps. Identify the eclipse type and degree, note whether solar or lunar, the exact zodiacal degree, and the serial series if known. Locate the eclipse relative to national charts. Does it conjunct, oppose, or square national sun, moon, ascendant, midheaven, or key planet? Angular eclipses are stronger. Examine the eclipse chart itself. What is the rising sign at the place of greatest interest? Which planets aspect the luminaries? Is the eclipse ruler dignified or afflicted? Consider visibility and path. Regions of totality or major partial visibility often experience stronger manifestations. Integrate outer planet context. Eclipses that coincide with stations, oppositions, or conjunctions of Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto tend to mark deeper structural shifts and allow time. Traditional authors allowed months, sometimes up to a year or more, for eclipse effects to unfold, especially for slow-moving collective processes. The eclipse is a spotlight, not a sole cause, and I beg to differ that Pluto in Aquarius is going to go down in history as the most society argumentative transit, because if it's not the gender ideology, it's the race stuff. It's all coming to the surface, how people really feel about themselves. It illuminates configurations already present in the relevant national or global charts, and oftentimes the release of tensions that have been building under slower planetary cycles. Now we're looking at appendices. So the first appendix is selected historical eclipses and associated events. The illustrative eclipse event correlations degrees are rounded. We see the dates. I did talk about these already, as well as the type. And there's a pattern here I'm going to talk about though. An approximate degree. And associated event theme. Okay, so we notice right away there was 2 lunar eclipses historically, with 3 total solar eclipses, 1 total lunar, and then we see annular solar. So with this total solar eclipse in 27 degrees Leo, we saw WW1 underway, Imperial Crisis. This lunar eclipse, 22 degrees Pisces, WW2 expansion after Poland. Total solar eclipse, 15 degrees Aquarius, Cold War missile season. Lunar eclipse, 3 degrees Scorpio, Chernobyl, nuclear disaster. Total solar eclipse, 18 degrees Leo, millennium transition, Europe. Total lunar, 24 degrees Capricorn, prelude to structural shock. And annular solar, 0 degrees Cancer. Pandemic solstice crises. So Appendix B is a summary for traditional significations by eclipse sign, following the spirit of Ptolemy and later medieval writers, adapted and condensed. So there's Aries, Scorpio, Mars signs, conflict, military affairs, bloodshed, sudden violence. Taurus, Libra, Venus signs, economic disruption, alliances, issues of value, and diplomacy. Gemini, Virgo, Mercury signs, communications, trade, treaties, disease, information, crises. Cancer, Leo, luminary signs, rulers, nations as family, public health, royal or national identity. Sagittarius, Pisces, Jupiter signs, ideology, religion, foreign affairs, mass movement, sacrifice. Capricorn, Aquarius, Saturn signs, structures, governments, institutions, long-term hardship, or reform. And we see Appendix C is a brief note on the Serial series. Eclipses belong to Serial series, families of eclipses that repeat every 18 years, 11 days, shifting slowly in geographic path and zodiacal degree. Each series has a developmental character studied by modern eclipse specialists, notably Bernadette Brede. When an eclipse of a particular Serial series has historically correlated with certain themes, later members of the same series are watched for related manifestations. The 1914 and other wartime eclipses have been examined in this light by contemporary researchers. Alright, and now here's a glossary of these key terms and the principal traditional sources, usually Ptolemy, medieval Latin and Arabic writers on eclipses, modern serials research, historical event dates are drawn from standard chronologies. Okay, so for this glossary of key terms, we see an annular eclipse is a solar eclipse in which the moon is too distant to cover the sun completely, leaving a ring annulus of sunlight. An eclipse zone is the range of degrees near the lunar nodes within which a new or full moon can produce an eclipse, roughly adding subtracting 15 to 18 degrees. Lunar eclipse, a full moon occurring near the node so that the Earth's shadow falls on the moon. lunar nodes, 2 points where the moon's orbit crosses the ecliptic, also called Rahu and Ketu in Indian tradition. Eclipses occur near them. Magnitude, a measure of the fraction of the sun or moon's diameter obscured. Higher magnitude generally indicates a more intense eclipse. Mundane astrology is the branch of astrology dealing with nations, cities, weather, collective events, and world history as opposed to natal astrology of individuals. New moon, full moon, the syzygies conjunction new or opposition full of sun and moon. Eclipses are special cases of these. An orb is the allowable angular distance within which an aspect or eclipse influence is considered effective. A partial eclipse is an eclipse in which only part of the solar or lunar disk is obscured. We see a series is a cycle of eclipses repeating approximately every 18 years, 11 days. Each series has a characteristic developmental signature. Solar eclipse, a new moon occurring near the nodes, so that the moon's shadow falls on the earth. Syzygy, the alignment of sun, moon, and earth. Conjunction or opposition, the technical term for new and full moons. Total eclipse is an eclipse in which the entire disk of the sun or moon is obscured from the observer's location. Visibility path, the geographic track along which a solar eclipse is total or annular, traditionally considered significant for the intensity of effects in those regions. And we also see world points. 0 degrees of the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, regarded as especially sensitive for mundane events. Thank you for watching this video with peace and love, and I'll see you in the next one. Piscean out.